right. Today we are going to break down the absolutely frantic, heart-pounding opening of Freida McFadden's thriller, Do Not Disturb. We're going to get right into the setup that literally throws you into a nightmare from the very first page. I mean, seriously, talk about an opening line. The story doesn't just ease you in, it shoves you head first into a full-blown crisis. This isn't some slow burn, you know? It's an explosion from the very first word. So let's get into this first act, which kicks off with probably the worst possible interruption you could imagine: a knock at the door.
So we meet our protagonist, Quinn, and she's in the most stressful, terrifying situation possible. Her husband, Derek, is dead on the kitchen floor, and there's zero mystery about who did it. She is very, very clear she killed him. And just when you're thinking, okay, this can't get any worse, you see those flashing red and blue lights. There's a cop at her door. But hold on, it's not just any cop. It's Scotty Dwyer, her ex-boyfriend from high school. This immediately cranks the tension up to a whole new level. He's like a ghost from a much simpler time, showing up in the middle of her absolute worst nightmare.
Now, what's so fascinating is watching how Quinn's mind works under this unbelievable pressure. A neighborhood screaming, so Scott's just there doing a routine check. Her lie right on the spot? She says they were just watching the movie Scream. It's such a clever way to show her character, forcing her to think on her feet, while we're just sitting here, both terrified for her and, honestly, a little impressed by that lie.
So you might be wondering, why not just confess? It seems like an impossible choice, and it is. On the one hand, she claims it was self-defense, that her husband was abusive and it came down to him or me. But, and this is a huge but, his family is incredibly powerful. They would use all their money and influence to make sure she went to prison for life, no matter what the truth was. So for Quinn, confessing just isn't a real option.
And that pretty much leaves her with only one path forward, which brings us to our second act. The only option is to run.
And her decision to run isn't just blind panic. No, this is a calculated, if totally frantic, plan. She's methodical. She showers to get rid of any blood. She chops off her long blonde hair to change her appearance. She grabs some cash and her passport, and she gets out of there in a car that won't attract attention. Every single move is about erasing the woman who used to live in that house. But the whole time you can just feel this clock ticking down. It's such a great way to build suspense, because she has to leave behind a mountain of damning evidence. A bloody dish towel, her footprints on the carpet, her fingerprints all over the murder weapon and, her husband's body. And to top it all off, a police officer can now place her at the scene of the crime. She has to get out, and she has to do it right now.
Of course, in a thriller like this, the escape is never, ever clean, which brings us to our third act, an escape full of holes.
Her journey is a total mess from the second she leaves the driveway. Within just a few hours, she's driving straight into a blizzard, she has a super risky encounter at a gas station that completely blows her cover, and then, of course, she gets pulled over by another cop. The world is just closing in on her, and it's closing in fast.
At that gas station, her entire plan to just disappear completely falls apart. A man, Billy Walsh, actually recognizes her from her old life. He comes up and says, "I'm Bill Walsh, Billy. You used to babysit for me." And just like that, poof, there's now a witness who saw her with her new short hair and can give the police an updated description. It's a massive problem she never saw coming.
And then, somehow, it gets even worse. She gets pulled over for something as simple as a broken taillight, but now a second police officer has seen her, has run her license, and knows the direction she's traveling. There is now an official record, a paper trail of her escape. The net is tightening with every single mile she drives. So she's basically forced off the road by this blinding blizzard and her broken taillight. She has to find shelter. And this leads us to the final act of the setup. Welcome to the Baxter Motel.
I mean, she really has no other choice. The weather's way too dangerous, and driving around with that busted light is just asking to get stopped again. So she pulls into the first and only place she can find, a remote, isolated motel off a road that's barely even paved.
And this place is straight out of a horror movie. Seriously. The Baxter Motel is described as quiet, isolated, and so worn down by the weather that it looks like it could fall apart at any second. This is not a safe haven. You just know this is a trap waiting to be sprung.
Inside, she meets the only two people there. First, there's Nick, the owner, who seems nice enough, kind of harmless. And then there's Greta, a very strange, long-term resident in room 202 who is immediately watching her from behind a cracked door. So much for staying anonymous.
Quinn is just trying to get settled, just trying to breathe for a second, when Greta drops this absolute bombshell. She's talking about the empty room right next to Quinn's, room 201, and she says, because a couple of years ago, a woman was murdered in there. And just like that, Quinn realizes she might have run from one crime scene directly into another one. And the details here are just chillingly specific. The murder happened right next door, in room 201. The victim was a young woman with blonde hair, sound familiar, who was stabbed to death. By creating this parallel, it makes Quinn's situation feel like it's part of some larger terrifying pattern. And of course, the murder was never solved. Then Greta adds another layer of pure dread. She mentions that the police actually suspected the seemingly harmless owner, Nick, of the murder. This immediately makes you ask the question, could the one person offering her protection right now actually be a killer himself? Her safe haven might be the most dangerous place she could possibly be.
And it's not even just about Nick anymore, is it? What other secrets are hiding inside the walls of this creepy, isolated motel? What's Greta's whole story? And what really happened in room 201?
Which brings us to the ultimate question at the end of this incredible setup. Has Quinn managed to escape one absolute nightmare only to walk directly and completely unknowingly into a brand new one? And that, right there, is where the real story begins.